All right, we'll get started back with Chapter 3, Methods of Instruction. We're going to talk about motivational techniques, how to set up and adjust your classroom, your presentations, and still be able to meet the plan and the lesson plans and the objectives. We'll talk about laws and principles of adult learning and the methods of instruction typically used in adult and fire service education. We're going to talk about the characteristics of Generation X, Generation Y, and Generation Z, and the baby boomers. We're going to look at communication techniques that will help improve your presentation, and we'll explain how to deal with the disruptive and the unsafe behaviors in your classroom. We're going to look at basic coaching and motivational techniques, along with an instructional session utilizing prepared course material. We'll talk about how to demonstrate professionalism during the learning process and manage disruptive and unsafe behaviors in the classroom. Starting off well, students are going to decide early on whether they will like class, content, instructors, and other students. Remember, firefighters are adults. There are differences in the way adults learn as opposed to the way children learn. Motivational factors make students enthusiastic about the content and eager to learn. Motivation does affect how the students practice, what they're going to observe, and what they do. Motivation and learning. Learning is the potential behavior. Motivation is the behavior activator. Learning and motivation combine together to determine performance. Without motivation, learning will not take place. 3 types of adult learners: learner-oriented, goal-oriented, these are your goal setters, and activity-oriented, the doers. Each type has different motivational issues, affects how learning takes place, and adjusting learning style is not always successful or possible. Factors that influence success are learners' grasp of how material relates to real world and can be beneficial. The theory and the practice can work to an instructor's advantage in this sense. Learners' psychological state, mild anxiety can help learners focus, while intense negative emotions may be distractions. Make your students feel welcome. The position of learners in the life cycle. Each phase of life requires certain behaviors and skills. Adults want to be autonomous and independent, basically on their own, out on their own, and kind of know what they're doing to set goals. There may be physical changes and geographical changes that also are factors that influence the success. As far as geographical or even in the classroom, that's why you want to make sure that we have a classroom that is comfortable, that it's not too hot, not too cold, and there's no distractions in the classroom. Visual and auditory acuity, intellectual functioning, the learner's internal world of ideas, beliefs, goals, and expectations. Attitudes about ability to learn. Attitude in general can greatly affect the ability to learn. Judgment as to whether learning is an important life goal. Quality of thinking, the information processing and learning environment itself, as we talked about. All these are factors that influence a student's success. Motivation as a factor in class design. This is something that is the primary learning component for adult learning, and we ask, why is the adult learner in the class? Why is our audience there, and what do they plan to get out of it? Why does the adult learner want to take or not want to take this class? And certainly over the years, I've had students that, were made to be there, didn't want to be there, or it was a required activity or class by either the department or the state fire commission, and so they know that they have to be there, but they're not completely totally in the class. We want to identify why to find out how. So we want to know the why, the precise motivation and techniques that will help the adult learner learn. Find out why students are in your class and what they expect. And one of the things we do early on is we'll do introductions, and we'll go around the room and everybody will do a brief introduction of themselves and just a brief history of where they fall in the fire service. Are they new? How many years of experience, and those kind of things. And oftentimes we will ask that question, what do you expect out of this class when we do our introductions? This information is going to let us help design lesson plans to meet every student's need. We may tailor the lesson plan to meet those needs. We can generate self-motivation in every student. We can find a way to do that, and then use a variety of motivational techniques to stimulate students. Oftentimes instructors will begin a class with humor. We'll do introductions, we'll kind of open up with instructor introductions, and then somewhere in there we may open up as our opener motivator. Could be humor, it could be a combination of serious then humor as well. Motivated instructors, the enthusiasm is contagious. So if you as an instructor are motivated, then and you're showing enthusiasm, then this is going to be contagious. And so the members of your class and the students are going to catch on to that. When you're dynamic, outgoing, charismatic, and interested in the topic itself, you're going to be able to teach with energy. And a lot of these subject matter instructors, different instructors are very good at different subjects, and we try to pick those with the enthusiasm and the dynamics to go along with that class. Certainly your personality serves as a motivational factor as well for your students. Additional factors include audiovisual aids, which we're going to talk about, your overall teaching strategy and method, and the classroom itself. So we want a good solid classroom that's going to fit the audience. We want to arrange our tables and seating appropriately, and we want to pick the correct teaching strategy for the class. A lot of classes in the fire service are a portion of a lecture, and then we add in or mix in skills somewhere along the way. And what we realize is firefighters they like to get out, get in gear, and do the skills. And so maintaining that enthusiasm on the road to getting there is key. And then what audiovisual aids are we going to use? PowerPoint is a wonderful thing. Certainly to get key factors up there to jog our memory on things to talk about. However, we don't want to use our slides as just reading from the slide and not expanding on anything else. But we certainly want them up there and in line with our strategy and also our lesson plan. Motivational factors are part of each level of instruction. 1, 2, and 3, you got to be able to motivate your audience, and so you're going to use the same tactics and strategies for that. Take time to consider ways to engage your learners. Know your audience at this point. Think ahead or look ahead. Do I have a room of 15? Are most of these going to be experienced people? Or a lot of these going to be new people? And it'll depend on your class. The learning process, we need to remember that learning is interactive. The learner encounters and reacts to specific environment, specific things along the way. Each adult learner has a learning style in itself, a distinct and preferred way of perceiving or organizing and retaining those experiences. Learning basically takes place in three domains: cognitive, or our knowledge; psychomotor, which physical use of the knowledge; and affective, attitudes, emotions, or values. The effective learning follows the process of learners begin with what they know, the information that they know, feel, or need. Then seeing how new information connects in real life prepares learners to learn. They're starting to make that connection. They know what they know already, so they have a bit of information and they can begin to connect that. Learners use new content, practicing for applying those things to real life. And that's where we get into, a lot of firefighters like skills and skill sessions. So they take what we've talked about, they take a demonstration, if you will, and then they're able to connect those things and apply it to the skill itself. Learners apply material learned to the real world. Learn by doing has been a long time saying in our business. So what is adult learning? The fire service training is designed for the adult learner. Firefighters in general, unless you're using a junior program, we're getting, even in your junior programs, you're getting high school student age, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And in most states at the age of 18, they will accept you as a firefighter. And so for the most part, we're dealing with adult learners. An adult learner is someone who has passed adolescence and then out of secondary school. Self-motivation is rarely a problem with adult learners. Most are looking to advance careers or to better themselves. The adult learning in the integration of new information into existing values, beliefs, and behaviors. So our adult students need realistic, practical, and informative type lessons. The information delivered in a variety of ways that'll help accommodate differing learning styles. So we have to be aware of different learning styles. Some people can hear it, take a few notes one time, and they've got it. They can recall it really good for even a test or an exam. Other folks have to read the material more than once. They listen to the instructors, and then they're going to ask a lot of questions. So we have to be able to read this and pick up on it in the classroom. Learning process realm, there's two general lines of thought in the realm of the learning process: pedagogy and andragogy are these two realms of the process. Pedagogy is the method and practice of teaching, and especially as an academic subject or a concept of theory. And your andragogy basically is the method and practice of teaching adult learners, or basically adult education. So, pedagogy, the art of teaching children. The teacher has full responsibility. The student is in a submissive role, and the process may occur in young adults who are members of the entry-level fire academy. Could be young volunteer firefighters who have not entered the workforce or higher learning environments. Similarities and differences among adult learners. The theory of andragogy attempts to identify how adults learn. Although the adult learners differ, there are some commonalities. So some of these things with adult learners that are similar: the need to know why they need to know something. And there is the need to know how they can use it. So we need to know, why do we need to know this information? And then how are we going to use it? Why do we need to know how to use it? The focus on practical tasks and activities becomes a thing. And I see it often that people sitting in the classroom, and a lot of people can read through and they get the material, but you really see the light bulb come on when you get out into the skill the skills arena, and you begin demonstrating and letting them practice the skills. So that hands-on activity, for a lot of people, really turn that on. Learn Adults typically like to learn at their own pace, and one of the things about a hybrid learning course like we're doing with online study, or a combination of online study and classroom activities, is another way to learn at your own pace. Use a preferred learning style and use rich history of life experiences. Now, that doesn't mean that we spend the entire time telling stories per se. Don't let storytelling and that kind of thing consume your entire class, but use your history and your experiences, not only in life but with the job as well. Differences among adult learners. The stage of life directly affects the adult learner, the stage of life they're in. Have they hit certain milestones? As far, are they living on their own? Are they married? Have relationships, children, all these things. Young adults uh, may be still developing a sense of identity. Hopefully are trying to establish a career at that point and pursuing maybe even a life dream of being a firefighter. That's one of the things I hear a lot with students is, I've always wanted to do this, and so now, I'm taking classes to go down this path. Having a relationship and getting married, again, those milestones in life, uh, have a difference on adult learning, and then achieving parenthood, having children. Middle-aged adults, caregiving for children or older family members can be a difference in there. Career changes. Maybe they've been on a career path for many years and decided to change. Physical and mental changes, uh, role changes in life, even in the relationship, from married to single parent to all kinds of scenarios, and then planning for retirement. You hit the point where I'm going to retire, then what am I going to do? Older adults face a series of upheavals. Loss of their jobs could be, because of retirement. Transition from parent to grandparent. Age-related physical and mental changes. Not being able to get around as good, but still wanting to help out. We have a fair amount of older adults in the volunteer fire service. They have a sense of community and a sense of want to help the community, but they're physically limited on some of the things that they can do. So they're there to do the things they can do. Deaths of friends and spouses in older adults affect us, and acceptance of their own mortality. Uh, Eventually, the fact that we're all gonna die. Three types of adult learners. Learner-oriented adults. The content is less important than the act of learning. These are folks that they enjoy going to school. They enjoy taking the class. These are the folks that you'll see that will strive for multiple degrees. Especially now in the online world, the learner-oriented folks, um, they're always wanting to be in that process, no matter what. They'll find and seek out something uh, to learn or to do in that area. Goal-oriented learners are the improving job prospects or learning new skills. So they're setting these goals. Okay, I want to do this. I want to learn how to do this and this. So they set that goal, and then they go down the path to meet those objectives and meet that goal. The instructor is responsible for disseminating the knowledge, for pressing that out to them, and then offering guidance into meeting those goals. And the activity oriented learners, this is the learn by doing, and we see this a lot in the fire service. People really enjoy getting out there and doing the skills way more than they do sitting in the classroom. Adult learning theories are based on the premise that adults have had a different experience than children and even adolescents. These differences are relative or relevant to learning. So again, we're using these life experiences. Oftentimes, I get students, especially in our 18 and 19-year olds, that some have life experience. I call it life 101, things like knowing how to cook for yourself and do your own laundry and those things, but some don't. And they're just now first time away from home, so to speak, for any length of time, kind of on their own and learning these things. Certainly, we've talked about how motivation influences us as adult learners. Prior knowledge of the subject can have influence. You have a little bit of knowledge about a certain subject, or you've read up just a little bit on it, and that kind of gives you that heads up going into it. And a lot of people like that heads up going into a class. The learning context, you know, again, a good, positive, motivated environment. Influence exerted by situational and social conditions. The arrangement of the classroom and kind of the groups. A lot of times you'll go to a specific department and you'll see the small cliques and things, but you can have a mixed class where you have many, basically you have more than one department attending a class and you have a mixed audience. Then you'll have some different social conditions there. Information meaningful to life. We can always relate our information and make it meaningful to life. Cope with life events may affect the behavior in the classroom, depending on what's going on in a student's life. I've had folks that's having problems show up for class. They have to be there, and you can just tell something's going on. And eventually, they pull you off to the side and, hey, well, I'm sorry, this, and this. I got so many phone calls during class. I've got this going on. Social and cultural perspective, social roles, race, and even gender play a role. And we have to, with the role of firefighter, in the past has predominantly been a male, dominated occupation, and that's just not so now. And we have to keep that in mind and bear that in mind when we're delivering our class. And our self-directed learners want to direct their own learning. The instructor must keep on track, and they're kind of directing themselves as they go along. These are usually good note takers as well. Those are the ones that they bring, note, paper, pencil, and they're asking questions as they go along as well. Critical reflection, the ability to reflect back on prior learning to determine whether what was learned is justified under the present circumstances, a unique advantage with adult learners, and it's a key asset for the instructor. These folks, they're going to look back on things that they've taken in or learned before, maybe even closely related to the particular subject that's being delivered, and they'll determine whether what was learned was justified and whether that's usable, in the present. This occurs when learners compare their ideas to those of mentors or even classmates. Oftentimes you'll hear, well, they've had an old fire chief or a fire officer, had this or this take on something, for an example, but it certainly differs from what's being delivered, and so that they're going to make that comparison basically on those ideas. This may reflect critically on assumptions and attitudes that underlie their knowledge. They want to make sure what they've learned before was usable. And as instructors, part of our job is to motivate our students to learn the information presented. So we kind of have to group all that together. Sometimes you'll get questions. That's where questions will be generated. And, oftentimes I'll explain things change in the fire service. Certainly this is one way that we taught and learned this material. And now as we move along the timeline, things have changed. Now our school of thought on it has changed. Learning skills as a factor in learning. Prior participation in formal education programs or other training programs will also affect adult learners' ability to learn. Hopefully that this is in a positive way, but oftentimes we will look back on different classes and different education programs that we've been through, and we'll make that comparison. Traditional learning skills forgotten or never developed, like reading textbook, taking notes, and studying. I know a lot of colleges will offer a study skills class, and they recommend that their freshman or beginning level students take these classes. And basically, it teaches you how to research, read, take notes, pick things out of your text, and study. So, challenge to learn or unlearn. And some folks, when they make that comparison, they don't like the way that they learned something, and they like what they're hearing better. Now they're trying to unlearn and learn the current content. Analysis of the audience. Factors considered in our audience analysis should include the age and experience and subject matter of the students. And one of the reasons why we do those introductions, that we ask, you know, how old, or no, we don't necessarily ask how old, but we ask how long have you been in the fire service, and what department are you with, your name, department, how long you've been in the fire service type thing, and maybe even why are you taking this class. And that helps us study our audience a little bit and make some determinations on maybe even how that we conduct part of our class. We can shift and make those changes rather quickly. Who the lesson is intended for and how the students will use the material. So somewhat we got to know our intended audience. Yes, we know they're firefighters, and we may not know the age and the experience level of the entire class until we start that class. But being able to switch gears and change, knowing, okay, we have primarily a room full of experienced people. They're going to know some of this material already. We now just need to expound on that. If it was a inexperienced group, maybe a younger group that's never had this type of material presented before, we might take a more basic approach, step by step, with those students. The number of the students in the class also bears a factor on it. We need to know, are we talking about a full class? Activities may have to be divided up differently. Certainly that you're going to need more instructors or co-instructors to help you with the class. These are all things that we need to take in consideration. The level of previous knowledge of the class material as well. And again, you may get that as you go along and you start getting questions. You may get some feedback and some information that lets you know that, hey, a few of these folks know a little bit more about the material and they're more experienced with it. Lenny Laskowski's audience analysis, this acronym kind of helps us with the analysis, and it stands for the analysis, understanding demographics, interest level, environment, needs, student needs, customization, and expectations. Today's adult learners are baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964, raised on television, rock and roll, high standards, work education, and high expectations, spoke out against social injustices, and usually are independent, confident, and self-reliant. So how do we teach this group of baby boomers? We earn their trust through demonstrated competence. These are the folks, especially when we're younger than they want to know that we are squared away, basically, that we are competent in what we do, and the knowledge base that we have. And they'll sit back and they'll listen to what you've got to say and make that determination early on. Show respect for their experiences. These are a few that are going to have some stories to tell. It may interrupt class a little bit, but let some of these stories go without totally disrupting your class, because it's going to show some of the experience. have them assist in the teaching with that. Have them share those experiences, their knowledge. They may have a specific call they've been on. They could tell, their experience and what happened on this, and it could give everybody else an insight on the real world activity. They are known for both accepting and resisting change. Everybody resists change initially. We all do that. Firefighters seem to be the worst group of all to resist change, and then once we do, we gripe about it. Group activities can be effective for this group. They tend to work better as a group. Generation X is next on our list. This is the generation whose teenage years were touched by the 1980s. Both parents worked outside the home. The abandoned traditional family models, divorce, and single parent families became a norm, and many stayed childless. Grew up with instant gratification, and we see this today with the instant gratification. And even right now ourselves, we're with the cell phones and everything, being able to order things quickly on Amazon, we kind of are fitting in this category now. Characteristics of your Generation Xers: independent problem solvers and self-starters. They are technologically literate. They embrace technology and kind of know how it works. They do expect immediate gratification. Skeptical rather of society and its institutions. And these are usually our lifelong learners, ambitious and fearless, if you will. How do we get through to our Generation Xers? Often there's a clash between the baby boomers and the Generation X, or traditionalist instructors rather. Both generations place a high priority on learning and developing new skills, but instructors must continually raise the bar and adapt to the cross-generational type training. So that's where if you fall in the baby boomer as an instructor, you may have to stay up on this technology and the delivery and all the nice things that we have at the tip of our fingers now, or even on our phones, that we can use to help us teach. And promote learning that has applications in school, in work, and in community. Generation Y, born immediately after Generation X, wide-ranging opinions on political and social issues. This group is more tolerant of alternative lifestyles and unconventional gender roles, more spiritual and religious, a disagreement common between liberal and conservative members in the Generation Y. Characteristics: considered young, smart, and brash. Really do not want to work to be their entire life. They have a retirement goal, and a lot of times it's retire early and do something different. Both high performers and high maintenance at the same time, and considered multitaskers. Teaching Generation Y, it's ideal for learning in virtual classrooms. This generation gets it. They get it well, and they're able to do the online content and do a hybrid type setup. They like teaching by technical professionals, hands-on and experiences. They do like getting out and doing those skills. Challenge boomer or Gen X instructors. The Gen Ys can be a challenge, but I think for us that fall in Generation X, we need to be able to, again, embrace the technology and the different methods that we have out there and utilize that. Generation Z, also called Generation Next, may bring their own set of values and learning styles. Instructors are going to need to adjust and adapt to their needs as well. Characteristics of our Generation Z students: they have taken online classes before. They have had computer access most of their academic life. They prefer quick and very visually oriented types of learning, and they prefer to work around their personal schedules. would find a smart board and a flat panel very recognizable. And these are the folks that, my children are growing up and they're using all these things in school right now. Teaching them learning disconnects can occur when moving from a high-tech environment into a traditional fire service classroom. May easily become bored and not engaged. This is something that I see in the classroom right now with this generation. As instructors, we'll have to adapt the learning environment to varied generations of students. And I think that's why I think the hybrid setup for this generation is working, because they are used to doing certain things online, then bringing it together briefly in the classroom for a uh, review, and then going out and hitting the skills. So this is it's kind of a challenge for us in the high tech environment. Methods of instruction. The method of instruction is the process that we use of teaching materials to students. For instructor ones, the method of instruction will be identified on your lesson plan by whoever developed that plan. Twos, you're going to put that in your plan that you've developed, but it'll be in there. The determining factors for your method of instruction: the experience and educational level of the students. What level are they at, or what level are they expected to be at? The classroom setting and or the training environment, and the objectives of the material to be taught, and then the number of students that you have. So if you're planning on doing skills along with a classroom, we have to take all these things into consideration. And then with that, you're going to have to take in the consideration of the number of students that you have and the time frame that you have. Audience analysis. We review the demographics of the audience, things as age and learning level and previous experience and other factors. Again, that's why those introductions are so valuable, and if you put your questions out there, you'll get this information right away. Adapt the lesson plan accordingly. Be able to, or be prepared to, adapt this on the fly as you go. Common teaching techniques. Lecture. One of the primary sources of information is we talk about it, we present the material. A lot of times we're using a PowerPoint presentation like we are here, and we deliver that content in lecture, and then the instructor gives forward their experience and stories as well. The next one is demonstration of skill and drills, and this is used for hands-on learning and skills learning. And we know that firefighting is a very skill-oriented job, and so we use this in conjunction with our lecture. This is usually the skills part. People, like I said, learn by doing. People like to get out there and do. Therefore, it's very effective with firefighters. And then discussion, that two-way open forum. We bring up and foster interaction between us and the students between themselves, and then the instructor, us as in the instructor, needs to be the facilitator. Oftentimes, in a lecture, I will prompt and facilitate discussion by asking a question, and then I will expect them to answer, and then we'll get some discussion back and forth, and usually that'll generate questions. And so but you do have to be careful about getting derailed on it, but that's a good way to use discussion. In the online world, you have discussion board where you post a fact, you post, a series of facts and offer up a question, or you might ask questions about what is learned. Would you like to enhance instructional methods? Role play, where the students act out scenarios, or we have other instructors acting out scenarios with them. There's also labs and simulations where the student is placed in real life situations. Case studies, examples from the real world. This is something that we use often, and usually our case studies are related to a firefighter death. Out of classroom assignments could be coursework that is completed prior to class or prior to the next class convening. The online content as well, you can put out assignments that could be due, whether they're turned in virtually or they're turned in at the next classroom setting. Well, next is online learning. The entire class meets at the same time. And you can do this a couple different ways. It could be synchronous and everybody is meeting at the same time. There's several different programs out there that you can collaborate together. One that we're using now is Blackboard. There is a part of that would let us meet together and be in the same classroom at the same time. This is where the instructor delivers the course material in real time by voice, video, or both, and the students will interact with the instructor and the class verbally or with instant messaging or chat back and forth as well. The course material is provided in the online classroom, and the students enter and exit it on their own schedule and on the asynchronous. And the discussion boards are used to access discussion questions and other assignments. This is kind of what we're doing right now with our distance learning, with what's going on right now. And certainly, you're listening to a lecture that we're posting, then you're getting on and taking quizzes and tests, and you're also engaging in discussion boards. And this is all in the hybrid setup or the online learning setup. Independent study entails registering for a course, receiving the materials in the mail, and then completing the assignments and submitting them back to an instructor for evaluation. I took a math class like this one time, and it was awful because it was math and I wasn't good at it. But in the military, they call it correspondence course. Other places call it correspondence courses as well. And this is simply, basically you take a test and you do other written exercises, and this all gets submitted back to an instructor. They evaluate it, and then you get credit accordingly. The blended learning, or what I call the hybrid setup, this is the combination of online and independent study with a face-to-face meeting with your instructor, or you're having labs and skill sessions that are face-to-face. This is something that we've looked at doing and want to continue to do in this program, and that's use the blending or the hybrid setup. Next is professionalism. When you go to teach a class, you need to exhibit professionalism. You need to dress the part, dress professionally. Welcome each student if they're walking in the classroom and you're there getting things ready, or hopefully already got things ready, and you're just kind of squaring away paperwork, whatnot. As they arrive, welcome each student, speak. If you know names, call them by name, or once you learn their name, call them by name. Make eye contact, use your normal speaking voice, speak with respect, and use pauses when you speak. Communicate information appropriately. Use gestures sparingly for emphasis. Use posture and movement to signal transition. Practice positive mannerisms. Choose the appropriate teaching aid. Know how to use the teaching aids that you've chosen, and utilize transition techniques during presentations. Effective communication ensures that our students learn. We remember, and you've probably heard me say something similar to this before, 10% of what you read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we see and hear, 70% of what we say, and up to 90% of what we say while we're doing. So if you hear it, see it, read it, do it, you're going to and can retain up to 90% of the material. Questioning techniques important to assess the learning process. Lesson plans will include questions to ask and to prompt things as you go along. It is important to ask the correct question at the correct time. You're trying to extract out some information, maybe even just see if people are paying attention. A question can be used to challenge the disruptive student as well. Common question types: the direct who, what, where, when, and how. The rhetorical, to stimulate discussion, to bring in a new topic, no, or when you're getting no or multiple answers. Open-ended, varying correct answers are possible, and close-ended, you're looking for or you're seeking for a specific answer. Knowing which question to ask and when to ask the question is very important. A lot of times in our lesson plans, we'll write this out. It will put it in the notes for the slide if you're using PowerPoint and you're using the presenter mode. You can look at your screen on your computer or tablet and it will show you the notes, but it's not showing the notes on the slide. You can write those questions, prompted questions, in there when you want to ask them. Dealing with the student's response to a question is also important. And another important thing to note is if we don't know the answer to a question right off, don't make one up. Say we don't know it and that we will research it out and we'll get an answer by the end of class if possible. Instructors are there to teach students and to foster a positive learning environment. So responding to the student's answer is critical to maintaining the good learning environment. So if they answer, it's like, have a response for their answer. That's good, or think about, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. For correct responses, as instructors, we can build on the response and move on with the lesson. Incorrect answers given, highlight the positive and then downplay any negatives. And sometimes it's like, well, that's not necessarily true, but think of it this way. Disruptive and unsafe behaviors in the classroom. Remember that as the instructor, you're in charge of the classroom. If you don't keep control, you may be perceived as less competent or a weak instructor. Disruption can reduce or limit the learning time. It certainly can reduce the learning for the other students, and it can ultimately lead to an unsafe condition or a negative learning environment. Disruptive students are the monopolizer who tries or wants to take control of classroom discussion. Basically, they monopolize and use up all of the class time. How do we deal with these folks? Call on other students during the classroom discussions. You'll experience this. You'll pick them out pretty quick. Sometimes you'll even know it before the class begins. If you are there early, and usually these are the students that are the first ones there, and they'll start asking you questions before class even begins. You can almost tag them as they're going to be the monopolizer in the class. The historian in the class has experience and wants to make sure that everybody knows it, that everybody's aware of it. Now, it's fine to let some of these experience and stories go, but if it gets to this point, you're going to have to reel it in, and you can do that by picking other students when you're at fielding questions as well. Real historians have years of experience. They share experiences in order to help the instructor and not because they want to be known. But also they can be disruptive if the stories become distracting. So that's where we have to kind of, you may have to step in and reel things in. Artificial historians basically are focused on themselves. They try to show how much they know, almost always being a distraction. You'll pick these out pretty quick. They'll be the frequent flyers on the questions. They'll raise hands, and you'll have to reel them in by picking on other folks. I've even had to talk to students at a break and say, "Listen, you're disrupting class, and you're going to have to, help me out a little bit here." So to deal with them, guide a discussion back on the main topic. When I say reel it in, that's what I mean. We got to try to guide them back to that. Pair with struggling students, because they will pick up on and be happy to help the other students, and with that they're kind of they'll take that off of the rest of the class. Speak to the student individually, like I said. Occasionally you may have to pull them aside and say, listen, I appreciate what you know, and I appreciate everything, but you're kind of disrupting class, and we keep it to a minimum so we can roll on. The daydreamer may not directly disrupt the students, but more of a distraction to us as instructors. And to deal with these folks, try to draw them back into the lesson. Use direct questioning techniques. You may even ask them a question to kind of get them back in to the class, and make maximum eye contact. Sometimes you got to walk a little closer to them and ask the question and just look directly at them. Every class has an expert. Uh, Sometimes experts may become confrontational. They like to show off brain power and expertise. They're able to provide information, factoids, applications, case information, and may subvert instructors' authority. To deal with them, discuss contributions privately. Now, these are the ones you're going to have to talk to off to the side and let them know, I appreciate what you know about the subject, but we have material we got to present, and it can't be done so with a distraction. And we always have a class clown, those that are seeking attention by acting out, making jokes. Um, sometimes you can just ignore it and they'll settle down. Engaging them with a direct question is useful. Sometimes you got to use a stern look. During a break, you can engage them in conversation, seek the individual's help in setting the example for others in the class. Occasionally, especially when I get conversations that are going on, and you're presenting material and everybody else is listening, you literally have a loud conversation going on in the back of the classroom. A lot of times I will stop and I'll just look at them. I'll say, am I talking too loud for you? Do you guys got something that you want to present to the rest of the class? And then usually they'll kind of stop and let you move on. The gifted learner may be a challenge in the classroom. They're usually not disruptive, but they may seem to be disengaged in the learning process, and they might appear to be like a daydreamer or daydreaming and shy. Have the gifted learner assist you as an instructor during the course. There are certain you'll know them when you see them. When they're in your class, you'll be able to point and pick them out. Those are the ones you want to help out in class. Unsafe or illegal behavior such as harassment and discrimination, actions or words that are threatening, offensive, or that create risk. These are behaviors that we have to deal with immediately. And we got to pull them to the side and have conversations and make sure that it's not repeated. I've had many a conversation in the day that I've told them, if I hear anything like it again, I'm going to ask you to leave class and you're not welcome back. You hate to be that way, especially with firefighters, with our group is the way we are, but occasionally you'll get people, and you really have to reel this in quickly. And any inappropriate behavior, do not let it go on. Stop it immediately. Have those side conversations. Behavioral problems can come up. We have to deal with these behaviors resulting from situations outside the classroom. That they may not originate in the classroom, but there could be, two people that dislike each other in your classroom. Our first priority is to create a positive learning environment for the entire class. Our second priority is to create a positive learning environment for the individual. So we want to find a way. I've had to separate people before. I've had to separate them out. And same group, same department, not getting along for whatever reason, and have to separate them. Problems and causes: seeking attention from the class or instructor, calling out, asking irrelevant questions, giving excessive examples. These are things you're going to have to deal with promptly and appropriately. Sometimes it's as simple as the first break you take, have a conversation with them. Transitioning between our methods of instruction, problem solving techniques, we use these to facilitate and to lead conferences, employee discussion methods during presentations when we want to bring up discussion. If we've broken up into small group and you're doing small group exercises and you have discussion there. These techniques are frequently used in your small group sessions where your participants have advanced knowledge, maybe even experience in the subject matter, and the goal is to reach a group solution to the problem or to the issue and getting them to work together as a group. When we transition between our methods, it's when students become engaged and actively participate. The instructor can then shift from lecture format to more of a guided instruction format. When a student has adapted to a basic skill level in a hands-on training session, instructors can then allow the student to perform simultaneous actions and progressive skill. Building your lesson plan as an instructor too, we may find ourselves building a plan where we're not using a pre-made curriculum, and we have to adjust certain elements of the lesson plan to accommodate students with special needs. We may be using a different types of visual aids. We may vary voice and tone inflections. Breaking class sections down into smaller units as well may be helpful. What are the goals of the lesson when we build our lesson plan? How will you achieve these goals? And how will you know when those goals are achieved? And so these are the questions that we're asking when we build our lesson plan, and we want to use any assessments necessary and provide opportunities to practice skills and set up skill session. Adjusting our plans, all students have unique needs. Our plan should be detailed and complete to meet the goals, flexible enough to meet students' needs, and then repeat information in different ways. So we've got this set plan, we've got this built up and ready to go, but we've got to be flexible as an instructor to meet the students' needs. The more experience you get with handling a classroom and presenting material, the better you will get at being flexible. Demonstrating a skill. When we break up for skill sessions, perform your demonstrations more than once in different ways. A lot of times we will set this up, we will do it slow, step by step. We'll speed it up the second time, we'll get a little faster, and then we'll be at full speed on the third time. And then give your students an opportunity to do the same. Step through it, go through it at a little faster pace, and then go through it at full speed. Follow the detailed step-by-step plan, the JPR and the skill sheets. Have those printed up available and have them in your lesson plan. Explain and outline the information that are in these and then discuss the results. So we've talked about motivation, the motivational element of learning. We've talked about adult learners, the different types. We've talked about our different generations and how to connect with these and the heads up on how each generation learns and takes in information and how to adapt that and the different ways that we have to adapt to that. Students' requirements differ because their experiences differ. The instructors must behave professionally. Control your classroom and address problem behaviors when they happen. Lesson plans need to be detailed, complete, and flexible for all your students to meet their needs. Multiple factors are used to determine the method of instruction and your delivery of your information. Disruptive students can reduce the learning time for the class, can disrupt class, and can often cause unsafe condition. And so these are things that we have to talk about and reel in right away.